I'm Kristie Dickinson. Welcome everyone to Why Authors Write. Today we get to talk to author, teacher, and book coach Lori Goldstein, who writes as Lori Gold. She's published 7 books spanning young adult historical fiction and now adult book club fiction. Her debut in the genre, Romantic Friction, was an NPR Book of the Day. Her latest book, Kiss, Marry, Kill, just hit shelves on April 7th. Welcome, Lori.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you. I love that you have a great bookshelf behind you to have romantic fiction because I can just hold this up.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with your cover art.
The idea came to me in 2020. I think I really started writing it in earnest somewhere in 2021, and it was finished within a couple of years, and then it sat for a while. So it sat, and I went back to it, and it sat, and I went back to it. So a draft was definitely finished before Tortured Poets.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, Kiss, Marry, Kill is about 3 best friends who founded a wellness app that's about to hit it big. And at the company outing, these ladies play a game of Kiss, Marry, Kill, the classic sleepover game. And they suddenly wake up the next morning in an alternate universe where they seem to have kissed, married, and possibly killed who they said they would,
Yeah.
which is so tasty. And the
Yeah.
twists keep on coming. So I want to hear from you more about this origin story. Like, what
Yeah.
gave you this idea? I know you've talked about in your People magazine interview, maybe like the stresses in your life of did I make the right choices maybe influenced it. But yeah, from in your own words.
So the initial idea hit me when I was watching this teen show called The Society, and it was on around that 2019, 2020, right before the pandemic. It's kind of the speculative show about these kids who get trapped in their town. Like they can't cross town lines. Like there's nothing past town lines. If they try to cross, they bounce back into like the town. I don't know the whole speculative story for that one, but that during that show, the characters were playing the game of Kiss, Marry, Kill because they were stuck, they were bored, and they were playing versions of Kiss, Marry, Kill. And while I watched that episode, immediately my brain went, that's such a cool hook for a book. But I always am trying to like push the envelope and write things that we call high concept. And so high concept is a big idea. It's easily explained, but there's some unexpected element. So instead of just having it be play the game Kiss, Marry, Kill, it's play a spin on the game of Kiss, Marry, Kill. So that's why in my version, I have 3 women and they each pick one of the things to make a choice about. Who would you kiss? Ask one person. The second person, who would you marry and who would you kill? Which is a spin on the way we normally would play the game.
Yeah. Oh, it's been a minute.
So,
You're right.
yeah. So that was what came to me first. I said like, okay, I want to do the game. I want to change it up. And then it just kind of immediately hit me that it would be some sort of parallel universe, alternate reality kind of thing. Again, looking to push an idea a little bit further into that high concept area. And I also love those forms of entertainment like sliding doors and the movie Palm Springs, anything that's a time loop or Groundhog Day, that kind of stuff. I love that stuff. So it was just this kind of, that was where the whole concept came together. And then I explored, well, what's behind it? What's it really about? And that's where some of this theme of choice came across.
Okay, so yeah, as you wrote it, you were managing 3 POVs. You were managing multiple timelines,
Yes.
literal multiple universes. I mean,
Yes.
parallel universes. Plus mystery, possible murder. Like, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so grateful as a reader because it's so awesome and not as hard to follow. It's not hard to follow in the way that you did it. So, like, tell us about how.
With a lot of headaches. And I'm glad to hear it's not too hard to follow because it is a lot. And I do think it's a more challenging read. It's not a straightforward, linear, single narrator story like Romantic Friction. I really was pushing the envelope, pushing my skills, trying to write something that was very twisty. I'm a big fan of Leanne Moriarty, and I don't know if you've read her books, but she generally has multiple characters, big ensemble cast, and they come together in the end in ways you just never expect. The twists at the end that all make sense. They're all seated, but you just don't see it coming. And that was really my literary inspiration, is like, I want to do something like that. Little did I know how difficult it is to even come close to doing what she does, because it's a lot of effort to say, how am I going to weave this mystery in?
Yeah.
How am I going to tell it through these three points of view? And once you add that extra component of the multiple timelines, I mean, I just have notebooks and poster boards with all like kind of track it all.
Yeah.
And I will say it's, I think the book that I've revised the most, and why I said like I wrote it and it's sad and I went back to it and it's sad. I had to keep giving myself distance from it to come back to it to say, how can I streamline it so it isn't as complicated? An earlier version was more complicated and I
Okay.
knew it was too much. And I kept going back to say, how do I rein this in a little bit more and a little bit more? And so I took long pauses in between, and I was writing other books that had deadlines as well. And then Romantic Friction came to me and it was so timely that that kind of got pushed forward on the publishing, timeline. But
Yeah.
it was for the good. It was every time I came back to Kiss, Marry, Kill, I improved it and I strengthened it.
So, to get real for a minute, when that writing process gets hard and self-doubt creeps in, what are
Yeah.
the tools that you lean on? Like, how do you keep going? Because you are queen of this. Like, you have the receipts. Like, you
Yeah.
you have done this now. You've written more than you published, right?
I've written 11 total, so five that haven't been published yet.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, yeah, like, how do you keep going?
I think that is the answer. It's experience. I think when self-doubt comes, when I was an earlier writer, it was more debilitating because I hadn't been through it before. I hadn't realized, oh yeah, I can cut a whole character. I can cut a timeline. I can change the ending. I can change the beginning. When you're doing it early on in your career, you're so tied to everything you're doing and you don't have the experience to trust yourself. So
Yeah.
I think, I say like writing is, it's not necessarily practice makes perfect,
Hmm.
but practice makes confidence. And I think
Mm.
confidence and trusting your skills that you've been here before and you'll get through it. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It's hard. And the original issue with that is not what it is in this final book.
Mm.
Because what's in the final book is a simplified version of it. I needed there to be a problem in the company, but it didn't need to be as complicated as it was.
Yeah.
And taking that out and replacing it with something else and still keeping the essence of what the story was, it was overwhelming. And trying to figure out how do I do the breadcrumbs for this new problem in the company and get the other one out of there and not have holdovers and remember what I was doing. It was really hard. But
Yeah.
because I knew I had been through hard things before, I was able to persevere and keep going. So
Yeah.
I think it's the confidence that I've done this before and I can trust myself that I'll get through to the other side. And that's why I teach and I'm a book coach and I tell my students one of the biggest things to do is just finish. Because you can't revise something that's not finished. And until you finish it, you don't have the confidence that I can write a whole novel.
Oh,
Yeah.
practice makes confidence. So, the other fun bit of drama that happened while you're writing this is that you found out the title. You had a
Yes.
title twin.
Right. Yes.
So, Kiss, Marry, Kill is your book that hits shelves April 7th. Also, another book coming this summer by Kara Tanamachi. So, can you tell us what happened?
So these are the things like you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes in the world of publishing, right? And so it actually came from my agent first. She sent me an email. She's like, "Ooh," and she sent me this rights report. She's like, "Have you seen this?"
Yeah.
And I said to my agent, "What do we do?" And that's immediately what you think. Like I've been working on this book since 2021, and I was like, "Oh no, am I gonna have to change the title?" And it's perfect for the book, right? It's like perfect.
Totally.
We already had my cover art, and so the agents talked, the editors talked. No one got anywhere in terms of making changes. And so I reached out to Kara myself and I said, listen, this is our situation. We both love our titles. What do we want to do about this? And we hopped on the phone and we talked and we both said, you know what, rather than one of us change the title, because neither of us wanted to, we felt like it was very appropriate for each of our books.
Yeah.
And we said, rather than like fight this, why don't we join together and collaborate? And why don't we do some fun marketing things and some fun social media
Yes.
posts? Maybe we can do some fun things in bookstores and give them a little, something for display that shows the two covers. And we really hit it off on the phone and we did the joint People article together and we're going to do a podcast together. And you make what I think is going to be a really fun experience at what could have been a really difficult situation and hurt feelings and all of that. And so, it was great. And to both of our credit to just say like, let's work together. And it's been fun so far.
I love this story. Anytime there's collaboration over conflict and
Yes.
where we can like rising tide lifts all boats. Okay, so let's dive into these gals of the book. Your characters, they are so lovable. They are also in their own lovable ways, flawed people like the rest of us. And they also represent this this theme of what do adult friendships look like, and how they evolve over time. You found a way to like really bring that concept of like adult female friendship to life. And I wanted to hear from you just how your inspiration for the girls and how they came to life for you.
The twists were very hard. The timelines were hard. I feel like character is one of my strengths, and I like playing into your strengths. I think every writer should play into their strengths. If you're great at writing dialogue, write a lot of dialogue. If you're not great, don't. Play into what you do well. And I feel like character development is one of my skills that I do well. And so they come to me pretty formed for this book because I had the idea, and it's inherent in the game. Like if you're making a choice and you wake up in an alternate universe and you have to live out the consequences of that choice, obviously choice, and I was going through some things in my own life, but obviously that makes sense as a theme. Once I knew I had three women, they're each going to make a different choice. They're going to be friends for a long time. So they know each other's histories. They kind of know who they are, what choices they would make. And what if that's flipped because they're in this alternate universe and they're slightly different people? But because I wanted them to I wanted them each to be a facet of the theme of choice. And so once I formed those three people based on that kind of worldview or philosophy, then just figuring out, well, why would you be someone who's afraid of making choice? That was my access to trying to figure out their backstory. So that was the high level. And then kind of, they each developed pretty, I won't say easily because nothing's easy about writing, but smoothly because I had a very clear angle of what I wanted them each to do.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, I was just getting to know them as people who feel like my friends or my coworkers, and I hadn't really thought of them as like pillars of decisiveness and types of decisiveness.
I think that's a good reaction, that they feel like real people to you, but not necessarily so screaming, what I was trying to do behind the scenes.
And what a cool thought. Have you thought about this in your own life now? Like, have you thought about, okay, like my Lori alternate realities? Like, what are some of your parallel universes that you think are happening right now?
I think that's what makes this book interesting, because it's not so much is the grass greener or is it just a different shade of green? And I think it's easy to romanticize what could have been and the choice you could have made. But I don't think we think about the consequences. This is the essence of time travel stories. If you change one thing, does everything else change? And I think that's just interesting to think like there are scientists who believe what I put in the book is true and could happen.
Or
is happening. I guess it's happening all the time around us. Yeah.
Okay. So to talk about crazy futuristic worlds and computers for a second, I cannot help but ask you about AI and how it affects you. And it's because of romantic fiction.
Right.
Of course, for folks who have not read it, it centers very much on the theme of the relationship between authors and readers and AI and this idea of AI as a writer. That's coming in, not just a tool that's come to be, whether we like it or not.
When I first started writing romantic fiction, it was the summer of 2023. And I started writing it because AI had just come, or not AI had just come on the scene, ChatGPT had just come on the scene for the public domain. And I was teaching a group of students, and there have been students I've been with for a long time. And one of them came on our Zoom call and was really upset. And I said, what's going on? And she said, all this ChatGPT AI stuff. She's like, why are we even doing this? Why am I taking a course with you to learn how to write? There's not going to be a career as an author in 5 years. And that was really, because it was so new, that was the first time I really started to think about it, and then started to have discussions with my students and other writers. Somebody called romantic fiction speculative very early on. And I was like, it's not speculative, it's real and it's here. And I think we didn't realize early on where it was going to progress. I think that's scary for all of us who value our artistic expression, and for readers who really want to read work created by humans. So I think it still remains somewhat unknown. But I do think I could very much envision one day we have bookstores and there are shelves with books written by AI and books written by humans, and they're just labeled as such. And then the reader gets to decide, and the marketplace gets to decide, which is ultimately how many, changes, ultimately take place or not. And maybe readers won't want it and they won't be pursuing those. But I could very much foresee that in the future, because I don't know how you stop it. Like you
Yeah.
can't put it back in the bottle. So we need to figure out a parameter for it to exist
Yeah.
while still allowing the rest of us who are human and want to write books exist as well. And hopefully still the best of the best rises to the top, and that's no different than the way publishing exists now. There are many, many, many people writing terrific books and great books that don't break out. And that's going to probably be the same for AI.
Okay, so now I've got some secret behind the scenes questions that aspiring
Okay.
authors like me want to know.
Okay.
And so we're gonna get into like the finances of being an author.
Okay.
And this is all 100%. You do not have to share, and we don't have to publish like whatever
Right.
you want to share. So you just let me know. But I just want to be more brave in asking the questions that I know
Yeah.
aspiring writers like me want to know. So
Yeah.
first, in general, how do you, Lori, make
Yeah.
money as as an author?
Well, so I mean, I think there are many authors, I wouldn't say many, there's a percentage of authors who can subsist on their advances and the royalties, the money they make from their book. That's not the majority of writers, and that's not the majority, I'm not fall into that case either. So, there are many authors who write and have a full-time job.
Mhm.
I'm fortunate that what I've carved out for myself is writing and teaching writing. So I stay in that world. So I teach at a writing center in Boston called Grub Street. I teach for some other organizations. I do manuscript consulting and lead writing retreats. And that's my other, revenue source. And I need to do both. I'll transparently say that I
Yeah.
need to do both. So I think the idea that you can subsist on a writing career alone is for a select few writers. Wonderful if you can, but I think it's eyes wide open that you're probably going to need to do two things. And some writers love doing two things and not having it related the way mine is related, because they like to say, I go to my job and I'm an accountant, but my fun is writing. And that if that becomes a career and I earn money off of it as well, isn't that great? And I get to turn on my creative brain and I don't have to do it all day at my job too. And there is value in that, because I will say at times, the heavier I am in reading my students' work and doing that, it
Mhm.
does take still creative energy. And sometimes I'll come back to my own writing and feel a little depleted because I put so much into that side. So I very much can see make it two different buckets rather than the same bucket.
I obviously am new to the publishing industry in that I've not published a book. And so this is all kind of news to me. And I'm hearing just mutterings of book advances are way down. People don't get book advances anymore. Like in your experience, is that true? Like, did you get book advances for these books? If so, are they like measly sums? Like, what's the deal?
I have not heard of people not getting advances. That could perhaps be there's self-publishing, which obviously you're in charge of everything, so there's no advance there. There's traditional publishing where, as far as I know, you get an advance. It's divided up into two or three or four segments. I can go into that if you're interested,
Yeah.
but you get an advance against royalties. If you don't earn out that advance, you don't owe the money back. That's your salary for the book, say. And then there's a middle ground where there are these hybrid publishers where you actually pay them some amount of money to do what you would do as a self-published author that either you don't want to do or you don't have the expertise.
Hmm.
So you pay a certain amount and they'll do cover design for you. They might actually do some editorial work with you. They'll handle the formatting to get it out there. They'll handle a little bit of distribution depending on what if they're able to do distribution, which some of these
Yeah.
hybrid publishers are, that you would not get in advance.
Yeah.
So those are the three categories I know right now. I have not heard anybody in traditional publishing, which is, whether you're big like HarperCollins or Penguin Random House, or the next tier down, which is like Source Books or Entangled or Charlesbridge. I haven't heard anybody at those levels not getting an advance, whether you're a big or a small publisher. So I hope that's a good thing. And I think they range from when I was first starting out, they told us YA books were about a $5,000 advance.
Uh-huh.
And advances go up to $1 million.
Yeah.
So that's your range, 5,000 through $1 million. So, it really depends on how buzzy your book is. It doesn't really depend on platform, which I think is good for new writers to know, because I think they hear a lot of oh, you have to have social media and you have to have this and you have to have a platform. If you're doing nonfiction, you have to have a platform. If you're writing an expert, home remodeling book or, a food book or something, you need to have a platform because we need to trust you as an expert. You don't
Yeah.
have that in fiction. You do not have to have that.
Yeah.
There certainly are instances right now where big influencers, book talkers are getting book deals and
Hmm.
they have a platform. I still think that's the exception. And I don't want people to think like I have to grow my social media and be this huge thing or I'm not going to get a book deal. It's not true. I've got 7 books published, and I have around 2,000 followers on Instagram. Like I'm not, I don't have 100,000 followers. So I think that should take a weight off. Like you don't have to grow that aspect of yourself in order to get a book deal.
Hmm.
Obviously, the more people you know and the more connections you have, it's always helpful, as they are in any industry. But I have had more than one agent, and they're both slush. They were not like connections, they weren't networking or any of that. So hopefully that gives a little bit of insight into that side of it.
Yes, yes. And did I come across like your mastery of the query letter? Like you used to advise people and you've
Yeah.
edited like a billion query letters.
Yes. Well, first of all, I love it. Coming from someone who struggled with their own query letter the first time around, this was back in 2014 or 2013, and I now teach a course on it. So I, over the course of my career, have edited more than 300 query letters.
Is this possible to answer like off the top of your head, just like the number one biggest snafu you see, or number one, like just
Yeah.
most important thing people should do that they don't do?
They have to show the stakes and consequences for their character. And this is the thing I think most people leave out. You can't just say, my character, is going to wind up in an alternate universe.
Hmm.
Well, what happens if they can't get back? Why does it matter that they're there? You have to give us the reason why this thing matters to them and the consequences if they don't achieve their goal. And that focuses very, very strongly on plot. And I've often found that represents what people haven't done in the manuscript. And that's why it's so hard to get in the query.
Mm.
So the advice that I was given is write your query letter copy before you start writing in earnest, because it'll show you the pieces you don't have. Query has to show an inciting incident, has to show a character and a tangible goal, has to have the hint of their emotional backstory, but a hint, very much hint, and then it's to show what's at stake if they don't get the thing that they want or the thing that they're after in the book. Those are the fundamental pieces of writing a novel, and you need to be able to convey that in your query letter.
Yes, I love the way that you've made it so simple. So you got see everyone? Just these are the pieces. You just gotta have
Yes.
them.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm actually curious, when you were coming up with the concept for Kiss, Marry, Kill, what were your comps? Is that a weird question to ask?
Yeah, some agents say don't put Hollywood stuff in there, and others say it's fine. So I said it would appeal to readers of Liam Moriarty for the big twisty things.
Yeah,
It was a sliding doors-esque story.
yeah,
And some of my other comps, because it is like this not based on, involves this company that they found, this app, that it was, especially at the time when I was writing the copy, like kind of the dropout, which was that Elizabeth Holmes kind of like story. Those
yes,
were some of my comps. Other comps were Midnight Library for
yeah.
kind of that kind of speculative element as well, and all of Rebecca Searle's books.
Oh my gosh, no wonder I'm loving this book so much. I love her books too. They
Yes, they're
just
great.
all of these stories just grip you. And I also just love an element of, I mean, you wouldn't use this word in Kiss, Marry, Kill, but just an element of magic. Like I think that's also like a little bit fun in terms of escapism.
And I like that you said there's a touch of magic, because I wanted this to feel there was a touch of magic in it. I wanted people to feel like it wasn't a science class, but
No.
I wanted the piece there that made sense for that aspect, but I wanted it just to feel otherworldly, and I wanted it to feel just kind of, magical, speculative.
Thank you for playing Kiss, Marry, Kill with
Of
me.
course.
Readers are going to love this book. And my last question for you is, where can people find you?
So the best place to find me on social media is on Instagram, and I'm Lori Goldstein Books. My website is lorigoldsteinbooks.com. And those are my 2 best places.
Thank you so, so much for coming on Why Authors Write. We are so lucky to have you and can't wait to see what you do next.
Great. Thank you for having me, Kristie. This was great.
Bye.
Bye.